life was a sad story in the end. One of the best things he did was lead the expedition to Egypt and take a whole bunch of Egyptologists who found the Rosetta Stone. Napoleon was a Freemason, very deeply interested in esoteric stuff, and for that, you know, his memory should live on, and we should honour the fact that he died on this day, tragically. But, you know, and it's interesting that Marx was born on the same 5th of May that Napoleon died on. Napoleon died in 1821, and Marx was already 3 years old. He'd been born in 1818, so their lives overlapped. Other great Europeans would, you know, loved Napoleon. Beethoven dedicated some of his greatest work to him, although later changed the dedication. And of course his mistake was to march on Moscow, which is, you know, stupid. Russia is a power in its own right. Western Europe will never conquer Russia and shouldn't even attempt to. Russia is an amazing country with its own history and lineage. I've been there several times. I love Russia. It's a great country. But it should keep out of West European politics. We should keep out of it. But there should be a peace treaty, a deal, trade deal between the European Union and Russia, which is a sensible thing and will come. The Green Party also gained 194 seats, which is amazing. I think it's their best night ever. And again, people are much more concerned about the environment and realise that staying in the European Union is good for the environment, for the ecological future and well-being of Britain. We're part of the European ecosystem. I'm very mindful of that living here in central France, because I get very similar weather patterns to what's going on in Devon or in Britain. We're part of the same ecosystem. We're all just off the Atlantic. We get the same storms coming in, the same cold spells, the same sunny spells. I mean, I've lived in Canada, which is a genuinely huge country. That's where I come from. And when you're in Alberta, you know, Ontario feels like the other end of the world, or let alone the maritime provinces. Whereas here in Europe, it's like, it's the same province. I mean, Alberta itself is just that one province is big enough to swallow up France and the UK. This is one ecosystem. So the problems affecting pollution in the North Sea or the Channel or whatever should be addressed at the level of European nations. My friend Chris Busby, who's a great eco-scientist and who has been campaigning for years with the Green Party to try and signal up the fact that the English government or the UK government is dumping nuclear radioactive waste in the Irish Sea and in the Channel in steel barrels which corrode and decay over time. It is the most horrendous, ignorant thing you could possibly do to the environment. Like, you put them in the ocean, after a decade or two, they rust, they rot, and everything seeps out, the sludge, which is radioactive, and then that washes up on the beaches of Jersey. Now, Chris has gone round with a meter measuring the radioactivity, and yes, it's there in Jersey and Guernsey, and it's there on the beaches of Wales. Why? Because the British government authorised this mass dumping at sea using these kind of steel barrels. Now that documentary that exposes it was made for Chris, with Chris, by a German documentary team. It's not allowed to be shown in the UK because of the kind of ignorance that is running the British state. And I watched it, and I recommend everybody. You can't even get it on YouTube if you live in the UK. So that's censorship. But those are the kind of reasons that the people en masse are beginning to vote Green. And I take my hat off to Caroline Lucas, our Green MP for Brighton. She's doing a great job. And these Greens understand we should fight this at a European level. There are very active Green parties here in France, in Germany, in Holland, in Denmark and so on. They often are in government. The Greens are powerful in Europe, and so too should be in Britain. And the recent Extinction Rebellion thing was to show that, you know, Britain deep down is green. But instead of just panicking and lying down in front of the traffic, what we need to do is get very intelligent. Roger Hallam should finish his PhD, please. You know, do it. Become a lecturer in environmental studies and politics. We need people to work with the institutions that we have. I mean, we're going to have a king soon, hopefully, if he's not assassinated. in Prince Charles, who is an extremely green thinker. He's an environmentalist, a passionate green, but not a fanatical, not the kind of mad green that says, oh, humans are a plague, get rid of them all, let's have just amoeba living and lovely little animals. No, Charles is a humanist, and as a Christian, he realises that humans are part of nature too. I mean, Attenborough's often quoted as saying, humans are a plague on the earth. I can't believe he actually thinks that. He's a human himself. We're not. We're supposed to be the custodians and guardians, and this is what's called the greening of theology. If you go back to the Garden of Eden, our job is to, which is, a mythical, Kabbalistic way of talking about what human beings are for. We're here to love nature, to be the custodian, the guardian of nature, and to name it. This is our unique human function. We come midway between the angelic world of the heavenly spheres and the earth world of the kind of Gaian sphere. And our job is to develop what Teilhard de Chardin called the noosphere, which is the interlaced sphere of knowing, which should be a zone of peace. Our job is to bring peace. That's what Muhammad was pointing out in his idea of Islam, which is, let's have peace, folks. Anyway, people are waking up. UKIP lost loads of seats. I think it lost 145 councillors. So it was a very good election night for people like me that believe in Bremain and in the path of wisdom. In Ireland, it was the same. In Northern Ireland, the same pattern. The DUP, which is with Arlene Foster backing up the Tory Brexit nightmare, they lost seats. They lost 8. The people of Ulster are saying, no, enough, Arlene, you're doing the wrong thing. Sinn Féin retained their rate. They remained the same, didn't lose anything. The Alliance Party, this is the best news. The Alliance are the equivalent of the Liberal Democrats in Northern Ireland. They are not factional. They have both Catholics and Protestants as members, probably the odd Druid. When I set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Britain and Ireland, I ran meetings in Belfast and Dublin and elsewhere, and I'm very concerned to see a neutral middle develop in Ireland that isn't fanatically either Catholic or Protestant, but is somewhere, in the academic middle, practicing epoche. And the Alliance is their home, as it is in Britain, right? And anyway, lo and behold, their vote went up 65%. Huge sweep in favour of Alliance, and they've gained 53 new councillors. 21 new councillors, taking them to 53 in total. And they got seats in Belfast. They got 10 seats, I believe, in Belfast. And are going to have a significant say in the future of that city. I love Belfast. It's a fantastic city. It has a great history, just as I love Dublin. It belongs to all Irish people and all Brits too. I don't want to see violence come back into it. I've been to Belfast after the Good Friday Agreement, and it was a vibrant, happy city with the economy coming back into stream, and all that is threatened by Brexit. That's why the Irish people are waking up and saying, hey, the only thing we can do is vote Alliance. The trouble with democracy, of course, is it's quite slow, and although this is a very clear signal to the establishment, my fear is that the establishment are still going to try and ram Brexit through because they are not going to be listening. And of course that's what's happening. The establishment in the media and in the Tory and the Labour Party, who are doing a sort of Faustian pact to bully Brexit onto the British people, are carrying on like the Titanic, even though they've been warned there's ice up ahead. The Greens also won in Northern Ireland. They got new seats. They got 4 seats in Belfast. And the Independents won again. So in many ways mirrors the results in England. And it's extremely good news for people like me that believe in Bremain. So congratulations to all the voters who took part. In the forthcoming European-wide elections that I believe hopefully will happen, then again I hope similar kinds of results come through. Britain has to show the rest of Europe that we're not this kind of Luddite destroyer nation that just wants offshore capital safeguarded in our big banking sector and people like Theresa May's husband are all going to be smiling, with their American cronies, and forget the fact that poverty is, on the exponential rise. And the Labour Party is correct in its attack on Tory party policies on poverty, but what it hasn't realised is that Brexit is going to make it all so much more worse. So we have, over the next few weeks, we have to make sure, in my opinion, that Brexit is not pushed through by Theresa May's kind of robot action. She's going to keep trying this. She's going to try and buy Corbyn and use whatever deals she can make in dark rooms behind the scenes. She's going to threaten. And what basically these people are saying, is completely opposite to truth. When politicians lie, they don't just do it gently. They completely reverse the truth. And that's when you can tell they're lying. It doesn't take a genius. So what they're saying now of these results is, that shows the British people want Brexit. What? Which bit of those results show that? Of course they don't. They show the complete opposite. But of course, when people in power lie, they lie 100%. And that's what's going on. The BBC is supporting that lie, as it has all along since June 2016. And as I've explained, it comes from somewhere very high up in British intelligence, which is the wrong word for it, which I think thought it would be a great idea to disentangle Britain from Europe and go into a much closer alliance with the USA. What? We already had a close alliance with the USA. Why do we need to sever our ties to Europe for that? The USA likes Europe, actually, or at least when it's under an intelligent president, it does. Under Trump, nothing is taken for granted. Trump isn't a politician, he's a businessman. He should stay with his corrupt chain of hotels, and he has not a clue about politics, which requires integrity and confidence and the ability to talk to people, as Eleanor Roosevelt made plain in her biography. So, politicians, yes, what do I think of them? I want to just quote you something from the life of Pythagoras. I'm studying at the moment some studies to do with Pythagoras, and it's very interesting that in one of the biographies of Pythagoras that's come down, which is a fragment only, it's a short thing, come down, transmitted by the Byzantine prelate and philosopher Photius, who was one of the greatest of all Byzantine Greek academics. He's preserved in one of his writings this anonymous tract, and I didn't know, but I've forgotten, that apparently Aristotle wrote a book called On the Pythagoreans, which has been lost to history. And it might have some of its contents contained in this Life of Pythagoras preserved by Photius. And it starts the following: Plato was the pupil of Archytas, and thus the 9th in succession from Pythagoras. The 10th was Aristotle. Now that's very interesting, because I've always loved Aristotle. I love Plato, and I've studied and taught their works for many years. But I also love Pythagoras and that whole Orphic tradition that he came from, which is very close to the Druid traditions. And there is a link between the Orphics of Thrace, and Mount Haemus was in Thrace. I won the Mount Haemus Prize from the Druid Order. That is a sort of Orphic tradition that Orpheus was on Mount Haemus, but it's also a Druid tradition. And so I think in Bronze Age Europe, going right back, there were links between the Proto-Orphic brotherhoods and the Proto-Druid brotherhoods, sisterhoods, and so on. And essentially they're the same tradition. Just one is in the Greek language, one was in the Celtic. They had the same outlook: non-violence, peaceableness, and cosmic studies. We're cosmic philosophers, right? Pythagoras, particularly, he wanted to get rid of, for instance, animal sacrifices, and replace them by numerical, oracular divination work. You can do it with numbers, which later became the tarot pack. And its equivalents, or the I Ching. You can work out the weird without having to scrabble around in the stomachs of dead animals. Pythagoras was a lover of animals, as were the Druids. So Anyway, what the text says is those of Pythagoras' disciples that were devoted to contemplation were called sebastiki, the revered, while those who were engaged in business were called politicians, politici. Those who cultivated the disciplines of geometry and astronomy were called the students, mathematici. Those who associated personally with Pythagoras were called Pythagoreans, Pythagorici, while those who merely imitated his teachings were called Pythagoristians, Pythagoristi. Well, I like that. That's very interesting. And you see, what it shows is that the politici, the politicians, are not in the inner circle of the true philosophical initiates, right? We kind of know that. That's what's being shown up. It's a problem. I mean, these politicians, in my opinion, ought to be swearing oaths of veracity. I mean, it's the basic requirement for a person to hold responsibility, to pass laws that govern everybody's lives, to control the economy and all the rest of it. If they won't uphold veracity, I mean, I'm speaking out as a senior druid and philosopher, saying we have to bring these people to account, or they will destroy the world. They are corrupt, they are evil, and they are ignorant. And these are very dangerous combinations. And the mass people of the world deserve better leaders than this. The fundamental requirement is an oath of veracity. And I don't care who's in Parliament, as long as they take an oath of veracity. At the moment, there's no requirement. The Speaker of Parliament pointed out to me there is a parliamentary code. We exchanged emails. But it doesn't require absolute veracity in all things, and it doesn't carry a sufficient penalty. It's very unclear what the penalty is if you go against that code. I would argue Theresa May has broken the parliamentary code in several respects, pushing Brexit down the throats of us all. And she should be held to account, as should the others. You know, if the Tories do a sort of right-wing coup and sack her and bring in a fanatic like Boris Johnson or some other Rees-Mogg type, you know, these people should be held accountable. So anyway, that's a summary of where I'm at on this Sunday, the 5th of May. I think that it was an extremely, positive election result for all the right-thinking and intelligent and kind and decent people in the UK that want to stay in Europe and want us to stay together. Europe has its problems. I mean, the problems of going on in France with the Gilets jaunes and, the complexity of that are worrying. I wouldn't be at all surprised if some kind of external intelligence interference wasn't going on in whipping up the Gilets jaunes in the beginning. I think just as the British intelligence used Mussolini to stir up trouble, I wouldn't be at all surprised if some extreme Brexit lot of dark agents thought, you know what we'll do, we'll make Europe look like really stupid and we'll get people on the streets of Paris throwing rocks and, we'll show, I have no proof. I'm saying that my knowledge of the way intelligence works, that's the kind of dark ops that it would do. And that is unacceptable. That is beyond the pale. To even live in a world where that's even possible is, to me, unacceptable. So one of the things I want to come out of all this is a sort of, a common European intelligence agency that would ensure that kind of thing never happens between European nations, but also a kind of peace pact that we wouldn't do cyber attacks against each other, disturbing each other's, right to freedoms and so on. We live in a very dark and scary world, and nobody knows who to trust anymore. So the European Union can be a haven of trust. I don't believe that a president like Macron, who launched the Paris Peace Forum, deserves the kind of flack that he's got. And there are some quite sinister forces behind aspects of the violence the Gilets jaunes are using. You're seeing anti-Semitic slogans pasted up on walls. It's it's an extreme right movement, it seems, in some respects, which I can't support. Obviously, I think is as dangerous as Brexit. So there has to be a a comprehensive peace settlement for Europe as a whole. Brexit is not the solution to the problems Europe faces. The cultivation of the spiritual virtues is the solution. The cultivation of the intellectual virtues that Aristotle talked about is the solution. And the cultivation of the, ethical path that St. Paul and Christ and the founders of Christianity talked about is the solution. So that's why I'm working with the World Intellectual Forum to create a sort of, an ambience in which we can discuss higher questions together as intellectuals and spiritual thinkers and seers, and come to common language across all the different cultures and countries of Europe. I'm the European coordinator for that group, and happy to communicate with people about what we can do as intellectuals against the madness of violence and war and so on. So anyway, thank you for listening. Happy 5th of May, happy Napoleon's anniversary of his death, and Karl Marx's birth. Let's hope that the best visions of all those who've loved European civilization over the centuries can find fulfillment. One of the great peace thinkers of modern European history was a man called Elie Ducommun, who founded the International Peace Bureau in Switzerland. I think it was in Bern or Geneva, and he'd seen the horrible corpses after the Battle of Solferino when the Germans and French went for each other in 1870 during the Franco-Prussian War, and he swore to work for the rest of his life for peace. And he edited a newsletter called News of Towards a United States of Europe back in the 1880s. And he was probably one of the greatest European peace activists. That body, the International Peace Bureau, is still going. It's now based in Berlin. It was run by Colin Archer, a friend of mine, as Secretary General for many years. And it was that group that sent me to India to basically get this World Intellectual Forum kick-started. And Ducommun ran it for years. Victor Hugo was involved, all the great heavyweights of European intellectuals. Karl Marx refused to go to the peace congresses, foolishly. The man was a bit deluded by that time, too puffed up with his own ideas, and he, in a sense, wanted war because he thought that would bring revolution. And he also didn't like Russians. He had a problem with Russia. He thought they were backward. He had his own prejudices in Marx and follies. I'm with the International Peace Bureau and the genuine peace thinkers like Ducommun, who said everybody has to be involved in this quest for peace. And I do find it interesting that he edited this journal that he published towards a United States of Europe way back in the 1880s. So that's the heritage that we Europeans should be proud of, that the European Union is a peace project. Right from the beginning it was conceived as such. Victor Hugo talked about that. It hasn't achieved its goal. But if you're setting out, on the Atlantic voyage with a ship, and it's got a few leaks, you don't scuffle the ship halfway across. You mend the leaks. And European Union, like all political structures, is just a vehicle. Buddhism talks about the jhana. There's the Hinayana, the little vehicle, and the Mahayana, the big vehicle. The European Union is a jhana. It's a vehicle through which we can accomplish peace, prosperity, respect for the individual, respect for women's rights. The whole package of values that the European Union is signed up to. It's a jhana. Don't destroy it till we've got to the goal. Yes, of course, when we reach planetary enlightenment, we won't need those kind of structures. But we're not there yet, unfortunately. We're still in a world where mobs still come and knock on the door and want to burn Pythagoras because he was too cosmic a thinker for them. Sophia-phobia still can catch light like a forest fire. So anyway, there we are. This is a little message in a bottle to anyone out there that wants to listen. spread the word. There is a centre here in France for peace, joined up thinking, which is 100% against Brexit, run by a British, Canadian, European, and you're welcome to come and visit and help work or just get involved at a distance. And happy May the 5th.